Yeah, I think I wanted to virtually agree with Anna, in response to what Julian's just said. It's where those of us that have been working in this field find ourselves not just in the despair of what the bill is doing with justice, not just for the victims, but for our society, but also that those elements that we've all been involved in as well are now tainted by being, as Anna called, a smokescreen. And, so what do we do? Do we produce materials that help people work on that? And are you then buying into it? So there's a really difficult working out for us about how we do what Julian said, but get over not get over, how we manage that gap between, I don't know what the words are. I'm but I was sitting here trying to work out how to paraphrase what you'd said yesterday to Aileen about the statement about Enniskillen, and then you helpfully explained it to everyone. Because my question was where, acknowledgement is the bit that we haven't mentioned this afternoon. And, I'm interested, Barney, you think the MOD might still make an apology? Because my question is, with the British government having acted so unilaterally, and apology is one of those dances, isn't it, where somebody needs to do something and there needs to be an atmosphere. Has this bill also wrecked that? Is my question. And then I just, on a positive note, just to flag that green and blue. So let's honour the stuff that has been done and done well.
Of course.
Because that's not part of the smokescreen. Green and blue will be on in the Lyric in September. And then it's got 3 days, which are described as an Irish tour. I'm sorry, I don't know what that means, but I suggest everybody find out and go and see it.
Yeah. Anna, do you want to pick up on?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And Kate and I have worked closely through the Storytelling Network and Healing Through Remembering. And so, absolutely, Kate, I mean, I agree with you. And you're right, it was just a line or two in the Stormont House Agreement, the commitment to acknowledgement, statements of acknowledgement, and, the expectation that others would do likewise. So on the part of the two governments, and others would do likewise. In actual fact, at Lambeth Palace, a lot of the conversation was around statements of acknowledgement and apologies and how that could be taken forward. And I think, as I see it, there's two parts to it. You could have maybe the more generic statements that open up the space for political generosity. So, it wasn't quite an apology, but even the Queen's statement, at Dublin Castle and the visit to the Garden of Remembrance, I mean, certainly talking to Republicans afterwards, they would have said, had we known what she was going to say, we would have attended, and that in different ways, that opened up a space. Everything that's happening now seems to be about closing down that kind of opportunity. But there is also then, as you alluded to, Barney, the need for more direct statements of acknowledgement and apology around specific
And Haas O'Sullivan, if I remember it correctly, talked about statements of acknowledgement that were worked out behind the scenes by all sides, so that everyone knew what everyone else was going to say. And I suppose it's in that sense, Kate, that I would still think there is the possibility of an apology from the MOD, depending on what others were going to say alongside that. And, I made the point to Tim Atwood yesterday. I don't see this process just being about the IRA, the loyalists, and the state. I think if we're going to have the conversation, then we need to have a serious conversation that involves everyone. That includes the media, about what we got right and what we got wrong. It includes the churches. It includes all of those who preached the condemnation, if you like, of the conflict period. And I think the last thing we need is a parade of shame. But I think what we absolutely need is something soon that gives the next generation some chance of moving on. Julian, would you like to say?
I frequently ask myself when I'm doing these stories, has wider society switched itself off to this discussion? And I'm always asking myself whether I'm presenting these stories within a very confined space of victims and politics. There's an awful lot happening at this moment. And, it may be a convenience that this is progressing at the same time there are protocol issues being addressed and we don't have an executive. But right at the very start of this process, post the non-materialization of legislating for Stormont House, I was at a discussion in West Belfast. Whenever a member of Sinn Féin on the platform said that the British government is briefing and has suggested that we're in private supportive of the idea of amnesty. And I remember turning to a Sinn Féin politician who was there and asking them why I didn't get any feeling there was a political crisis being born out of what is being advanced here on legacy. And it brings me back to the question I began by asking, whether wider society has basically switched itself off to this. And this is a discussion and a concern which is happening in a too confined a space.
Well, you and I will both know that it's not easy to get a legacy story onto the news. You know, that sometimes you have to argue to get a legacy story onto the news.
Yeah.
And a part of that is the moving on.
Yeah, and there is one, if not two generations,
Of course.
of people who didn't live this.
Yeah.
And my news editor is continually asking me how this is relevant to them, and I revert to my stock answer that this is still a divided society, and this is an issue that needs to be addressed, and that is its relevance in the here and now. Yeah.